The Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Josh Mansfield. Portland Open taking place this weekend. 4-round tournament on the Disc Golf Pro Tour, and we've got a lot to break down today, Josh. This is going to be a fun show. I think we have some more interesting segments this week than we've had in quite some time in one show.
Well, I think Portland Open gave us a lot of content to talk about. When you've got Simon and Val winning tournaments, there's going to be great storylines to talk about. So thanks, shout out to those winners and everyone else who we're going to be talking about, because I think this weekend really gives us a lot of, it kind of spurs the conversation about a lot of different topics. We have individual players' performances and storylines, but overall, I think this kind of confirms and gives us some evidence, and anecdotally gives us a little more evidence supporting what we've seen as larger season trends. So Portland Open really delivered in terms of some big storylines.
Well, we've got to start with the biggest first, and that is that Simon Lizotte has gone back-to-back and becomes the first MPO player to go back-to-back this season. And we talked about this in our live Rapid React show on Sunday, Josh, and we hope everybody becomes a subscriber so that you can catch those after every Elite Series event this season. You can just go to discgolf.ultiworld.com/subscribe to join us there and in the Discord. Simon is now squarely in the Player of the Year conversation. I don't see how you there's no way not to have him in that conversation at this point. And yes, it's a small window of really strong play from Simon, but at the end of the day, if you have multiple wins on the Pro Tour, and this is true dating back to at least 2020, if not before that, if you have multiple wins on the Disc Golf Pro Tour, you're probably going to be in that conversation. And right now, Simon is vaulting up the board in terms of world championship odds. What was Simon's world's odds 4 weeks ago? Probably 40-1 or something like that, 50-1, maybe higher, arguably.
I hope you paid for those odds. Jeez.
Yeah, if you got in early on that, if you could, if only. Where are we at, Disc Golf Pro Tour? Come on, DraftKings, let's go. But now what are his odds? 10-1? 8-1? I don't know. But he is quickly ascending into favorite category because not only is he playing great, but many of the other top level players are either not playing particularly well right now or are hurt and are out. So that's making this very interesting. But what a performance again from Simon, Josh.
Yeah, it really was a great performance, and it was definitely, this one felt in different fashion because, he plays well at Blue Lake, goes into Glendoveer, plays well again, but the entire time you're looking at the podium and you're thinking, 2 strokes, it could be close, and very quickly it became close. Garrett Gurthie really gave him a run for his money, pushed him the entire final round, and that was a different performance in a different tournament than we saw out of the OTB. Because, number one, Simon's got the guy pushing him right there on his card. He's able to see it. It becomes match play. He became tied pretty middle of the round and stayed that way for a good handful of holes. And so I think this one was just in very different fashion. And for Simon still to be able to take down the win, I think is just something that's really exciting. But it also is really informative about Simon's sustainability and ability to win under a variety of circumstances.
Yeah, and it was such an interesting and exciting round. This is one of those ones that I think if you missed it live, it's hard to replicate the energy and the sort of the entertainment value if you didn't see it live, because Simon comes out and gets 2 early birdies and extends the lead a little bit, and then Gurthie gets 4 of the next 5 while Simon goes on a bit of a drought and doesn't really give himself birdie looks for that big stretch in the middle of the front 9. And then they match birdies on 8, 9, 10, and 11. So, they're just playing out of their minds, parking every hole, tapping in birdies. Simon Lizotte gets 2 back. Then he bogeys to give 1 back. Garrett ties it up on 16 with a birdie. And Lizotte misses from circle 2. And then we go to 18. Everything's all, tied up. You're thinking it's going to go to a playoff. Simon makes the huge mistake going out of bounds on the long peninsula OB fairway. And then Garrett throws, let's be honest, a disastrous forehand that, never comes back in bounds and gives the stroke right back. And obviously it's easy to sit and think about that particular shot because all Garrett needed to do really was get it 300 feet up the fairway and stay safe, and misexecuted in that spot. With some time to have thought about it, Josh, do you like the play that Garrett made there, knowing that he just really had to play for par at that point, and the decision to go forehand as he had done in round 3?
I still don't like it. And the reason why is something that we talk about often is, picking your mistake and what mistake you're going to make. If you're throwing a forehand, which, I really don't think is, we know very clearly is not Double G's strength, right? So let's be really frank. We're not talking about, Nate Sexton throwing a forehand here. So we're taking a player who is not known for forehand dominance, who is known for incredible turnover shots and incredibly controlled turnover shots. And he chooses the shot that is going to play 90% out of bounds. Even if that shot makes sense just based on the shape because it's more comfortable, if you're Garrett, you have to ask yourself, if I go OB, where do I want to go OB, and what shot is best going to give me that chance? And that's the biggest critique I have of the forehand. It's not even the fact that it went OB. Look, Simon went OB. The wind was weird. It's a small, green / fairway. I'm not shocked that people were going out of bounds. But if you're Double G, you say, would I rather advance 10 feet? Or if I'm going to risk going OB, why not risk going OB closer to where Simon is,
right?
And take the par and move on. I just, the fact that it, you always have to ask yourself, what's the worst possible thing that could happen? And the worst possible thing that could happen did happen, and it led to Double G being still way out of position and not even be able to scramble for par.
That was the risk. That's a great point. I haven't actually heard somebody make that specific point, which is that because you're throwing it to hang out over the OB and try to bring it back in, if you don't bring it back in, then you've barely advanced. And ultimately that's kind of what cost him, because if he'd gone OB further up, he would have ended up like Simon, most likely, and still taken par on the par 5.
Yep.
And what I said play for par. He really needed to play for birdie, but for these guys, birdie is a par on this hole because it's a par 5. So the thing is, I certainly I would throw forehand there, and I think most players would, because if you leap too much hyzer on it, then you're fine, right? It's coming back in, you're going to be fine. And with the backhand, there's obstacles in the hyzer path. I think ultimately he probably sits and thinks, man, I should have just thrown a rock straight. And, hopefully we get a chance to ask him about that. We're scheduled to have him on for our interview show tomorrow. So looking forward to chatting with him. Anyway, you know what? Sometimes into the biggest pressure spots, players make a mistake. And we've seen, we talked about it in the preview show. This hole is a clone of 18 at the Fort, of 18 at Swanson for the OTB Open. And here we are, Glendoveer, basically the same hole design. And we were kind of giving it grief. But is it time to just accept that this is actually the most interesting way to have hole 18 play when you're coming in? How many times do we see the drama unfold because of the tight OB? I don't know what else to say. It continues to deliver exciting moments. By the way, our over-under was 87 OB strokes on hole 18 at Glendoveer. And I actually didn't even think about this, but there was a cut, Josh, because of course there was a 4-round tournament. So like I truly, my number, which people were ridiculing me, was even worse because we weren't going to have all those players playing it again on day 4. And yet, MPO alone in round 3, there were more than 70 OB strokes on hole 18. It flew over 133. My number was 87. So I take the point there. But I mean, that goes to show you that it was challenging. It was, the packed line of spectators all along that fairway it's just fantastic. It's fantastic drama, and you couldn't ask for a more exciting finish. I mean, on the broadcast, when Simon went OB, they, Ian and Philo basically crowned Garrett the winner of the tournament. A little prematurely.
Just a little bit. And that's right. I guess, we gave Portland grief, like you said, for choosing to copy that design. I will continue to give tournaments grief that continue to use those same hole 18. But look, if it works, steal shamelessly and make it your own and make it great. And if it's going to continue to deliver, then go ahead. I mean, I don't want every course on tour to have the exact same hole 18. But I think that there are lessons that can be drawn from the best hole 18s in the world. You have
think about one of your favorites, Josh, Fox Run.
Run.
It's not the same, but it has the same philosophy of tight OB on both sides.
Well, and I was also going to add the Beast in Nokia, Finland. Same thing. Tight OB with the safe shot is more obstructed by the little pine trees. And then the OB gets even tighter as you get to the green. That one's shaped very differently, but same philosophy. Think of USDGC with tight OB and a dangerous green. Like, hole 18 needs to be one that you can lose 2 to 3 strokes on. And, players are probably going to say, I hate the gimmick that, if I go into the final hole by 3 strokes, I still could lose it. And they probably don't enjoy that as much. Well, at least the leaders don't. And, when people fall behind and lose on a hole 18 like that, like Paul Macbeth, they're probably not going to be too happy about it, or Paige Pierce. But the reason we watch disc golf is entertainment, right? The reason the Pro Tour does this, the reason the Disc Golf Pro Tour is a company, is to produce entertainment. And these hole 18s deliver entertainment. And so make every course a hole 18 with lots of OB and a dangerous green and, different safari animals. Instead of a giraffe, let's get an elephant next time. You name it, and I'll be pleased. So it was exciting. It's a course, and I think the course design in general was very good. I think it draws from a lot of other aspects of courses that we've seen on tour that have been very strong. There was a lot of great shot shaping. I still will commend the use of elevation at Glendoveer. I think it's excellent. It's one of my favorite uses of elevation on tour. And hole 18 was just kind of the cherry on top.
Glendoveer was one of the best courses this season. Straight up. I think they improved it from last year. I think that the natural beauty of the course was unbelievable. And I'll take a mulligan. I said that there were pine trees. A Portland resident emailed and chastised us, as they should, because they're fir trees. I'm sorry. In New Mexico, we have pine trees. So I just sort of assumed it was pine trees.
Well, it's funny that emailer, that listener said that we made cringeworthy comments. And I think I said Blue Lakes instead of Blue Lake. And you said pine instead of Douglas fir. And it just made me chuckle.
We both take the L on that.
We do.
Mulligan. But yeah, I thought Glendoveer, the course was really, really great. And I think this is the gold standard of what golf course disc golf needs to look like. It doesn't really follow the fairways of the golf course, which I thought, we also saw well done at OTB. But sorry, Fresno, California, just not looking quite as nice as Portland, Oregon. And that is what it is. You're like in the Central Valley, kind of in the desert and the sun, and Portland, you have all this lush greenery, and it was just beautiful to watch. I mean, just so fun to watch, and it helps to have so many spectators. I mean, Portland is like going up the list of like elite disc golf cities. Not that it wasn't already right there, but I could see. If it fit in the tour, I could see the Disc Golf Pro Tour Championship happening in Portland. I think we need to have another Worlds in Portland. I think that like you're seeing what this can be, which is like incredible spectator experience, great options for courses, including a course like this that's just built out of a golf course. And so I give a big thumbs up to Glendoveer, because I think like that's kind of what you want disc golf to look like. Beautiful, big trees, not feeling like I'm just watching hyzers up the fairway. And so kudos to all involved. I want to talk a little bit more about Simon's play. Even in the final round where he wasn't maybe at his absolute sharpest, still just a couple shots off the hot round. And here's the thing that I think is the most interesting. He had the third fewest OB strokes in the field, Josh. And his tee to green performance, as you would expect, was very strong, as it typically is for the player that wins. But I think the fact that he had very low OB, just 6 strokes on the weekend, tells you that explains why he won. His control of the disc right now is about as good as it gets. His putting was fine this weekend. It was better than average, but it wasn't the deciding factor for him.
Right.
And that's not surprising if you watched him play. Like, he missed some putts, but I think that we're seeing a new Simon in some ways. As we've discussed, he is now able to commit to the smart shot, and we know that he has incredible control in general, but like when you're trying these crazy lines that have a very high, a very low margin of error, where like a small mistake means you're out of bounds, he's not doing that stuff anymore. And as a result, he's getting a lot of birdies.
Well, and I think at this point, just the limitations on the way that he has to play is something that adds to and is really developed by his creativity now, because you saw shots where he threw off the back of the tee pad this crazy hyzer directly over spectator heads and goes not at all the way that the line is intended, but he's throwing a hyzer shot with no OB. And so the creativity is lending itself to shots that are still high percentage and allows him to see the course differently. And that means that Simon's creativity now becomes an incredible tool and asset rather than just something that's a sideshow to the actual golf. And that's when, Simon is going to be at his most dangerous with that, without a doubt, in my opinion.
So, so far in the 2022 season, he's 95th in OB rate on tour. But this weekend, he's 3rd. And last weekend, he's 13th. And so if you're looking for some explanatory value in like, why is Simon suddenly playing so much better? He talked about the putting, but I also think the story is about his control on the tees and in the fairways. And that's to me like why he was so successful this weekend, because it was easy to bleed strokes out there to the OB. Plenty of people who finished high up the leaderboard had a lot of OB strokes. Like, let's look at the top 10 really quick. Simon had 6, Girthy had 7, but like other players, Gannon Burr 12, Macbeth 11, Albert Tom, who finished in 5th, had 13 OB strokes. If you go down to Ezra Aderhold in 11th, he shot 20 under, but he had 17 OB strokes. He was one of the best players. He actually outshot Simon tee to green. If you don't account for OB, which
because tee to green doesn't account for OB. Yep,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah.
So interesting notes there. Garrett Girthy also had a great weekend, Josh. Where did he make his mark?
It's interesting because Garrett Girthy's numbers, except not necessarily in Tee to Green, but if you look at just the raw percentages, Garrett Gurthie actually had just as good of a weekend, if not slightly above in a lot of the metrics of Simon. 30 or 83% in fairway hits, 49% circle 1 regulation, 72% in circle 2 regulation. It really, his scramble percentage is the only one percentage-wise that has the blemish compared to Simon's statistics. But what's most impressive about Double G, I don't know what he did this weekend. I don't know what he ate. Something happened though, and Double G went 89% and 31 or 37% circle 1X and circle 2. For reference, his normal putting statistics are 78 and 12. So he was, 11% better from C1X, and he was 25% better from circle 2, which, look, numbers like that just don't happen that often. And I don't think this is some big turnaround for Garrett is the problem, because I just don't anticipate his putt remaining at those levels.
Maybe not all season, but
no,
it could sustain for a few weeks.
Or it could pop back up later. Yes.
I mean, we just know that he's a career below average putter for a tour.
Right.
But I mean, he was dropping bombs in the final round. Like, even under pressure, he really wasn't missing very much. He missed a circle 1X putt on hole 1, and then he was hitting everything. I think he went 2 for 3 from circle 2, and like a lot of those makes down the stretch in the back 9 for like 30 feet, and bam, chains, like slightly out of position with a tree obstruction, boom, like little Anheuser putt, chains. He looked great, and it was super fun to watch this kind of like throwback competition between two guys who are more relevant probably 5 years ago than they are right now on tour, although Simon is trying to change that in a hurry.
Yes, he is. One thing about Double G that I've never noticed. So how on the UDisc page, it shows like their favorite putters, mids, and drivers?
Yeah.
What do you think Double G's favorite driver is?
Wraith.
That's what you'd think. It says all of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
That's a good Easter egg.
I love that.
Let's take a look at a couple other folks in MPO. So Isaac Robinson made the podium. And I was like, okay, Isaac Robinson, is he having a sneaky good season? And I kind of think the answer is yes. First of all, Josh, did you know that Isaac Robinson is 1035 rated?
No, I did not know.
One of the mid 1030 guys that is right alongside Kevin Jones and James Conrad, and on and on the list goes. He is right there.
Okay.
He finished 8th at USDGC last year. He has 2 top 5 finishes on tour this season. He was 5th at Waco, and now here he is in 3rd place. And he is the undisputed C1X putting champ right now. He is 91% on the season. That is 2% better than Eagle, 2% better than Andrew Marweed. That's, at these levels, that's pretty significant. The guy has only missed 13 C1X putts this season. That's it. That's all he's missed. He's had like 150 putts. He's only missed 13 of them. Imagine if that was you.
I'm pretty sure I missed more putts this last weekend than he's missed all season.
So I'm Isaac Robinson hasn't played as many tournaments as some other guys on tour, but looks like he's about to be pretty locked into the tour for the rest of the season. I think you have to keep an eye on this guy for potential future podium finishes. And would it blow you away to watch him win a tournament? I mean, I think he showed this weekend that he's got the tools.
Well, Isaac was featured on the round 3 Jomez coverage. They do the interview for one of their podium or one of their lead card. Isaac was the feature for round 3. And he talks about that he, has been really good at disc golf and plays, but for him, it was really, really important that he finished college and just graduated in this past May. So congratulations to Isaac on graduating. But he said, now that I'm done graduated, I'm ready. I'm hitting tour. I'm about to do this full time. This is about to be what I do. And if this is a predictor of things to come, then look out, because we might have someone on tour who really could make a big splash. He's got the rating, he's got the putt, and the big thing when you look at his numbers is it's not just his putter, right? 91% C1X is incredible. He's also sixth in fairway hits at 76%.
Mm-hmm.
Right? His circle 1 in regulation has him in 29th, 39%. Circle two in regulation is in 39th at 63%. Did I say 29th in the first one? 29 and 39. Anyway, regardless of what I said, those two numbers they're good numbers for someone who is not on tour right now. And the big thing to me is that we have 10-30 rated local guys who play on the pro tour and do okay, right? They have their stretch and they play, and you're like, oh yeah, I could see that person taking top 20 or what have you. Case in point, James Proctor took 21st at the Portland Open. Shout out to James. That's kind of, what we expect of James Proctor when he's on tour. He's 1033 rated. That's James Proctor getting top 20 is good when he shows up and comes and competes. The fact that Isaac, though, has 2 top 5s shows that he's more than just a local pro who happened to have a really high rating because he smokes people at his local B tiers. Like, Isaac is, I think, I agree with you, going to be the real deal and has a real potential to have several more podium finishes over the rest of the season.
There are now 19 MPO players that have finished on the podium this season through 8 events. Okay? That's more than all of 2020 combined, which you might say, well, it was a weird year. There were only 10 Elite Series events because of COVID. Fair enough. True. It's also more than the entirety of, if you go back to 2017, through 17 events, there's already more players who finished on the podium this season. And we're well more than halfway. We're about 3/4 of the way to the 2021 mark. And we've done less than half of the tour. So that's going to be something to watch. There are now just 2 players with multiple Elite Series wins this season. It's Ricky, and now it's Simon. And it's going to be a lot of fun to see how things shake out over the next, couple months as we lead up towards Worlds with, who's going to start to establish themselves and pull away, because I don't think that we've really seen it. Ricky missing time. Calvin didn't really show up this weekend. Paul McBeth, everybody's saying, oh, he's going to chase down Simon on the final day. Well, he blew up and had a quad bogey. How many times have we seen that from him this season? Playing fine, and then just has a disaster hole or a disaster round that completely takes him out of contention.
We've seen it at almost every tournament.
It feels like it's been, it's like a clockwork thing right now over these last few weeks. So very interesting. Go ahead,
Charlie.
Josh.
Yeah, something fun looking at those statistics. We have 5 guys who have multiple podium finishes, including wins. Ricky, Simon, Calvin, Paul. You know who the 5th one is?
Well, I do, because we just talked to him about it.
Yes, we did.
It's Aaron Gossage.
It's Aaron Gossage. That's the man who is number 5 on that list. What a cool club to be in. Anytime you get your name included with those 4, you've got to be patting yourself on the back. It is getting harder to podium. And if you even look at last year, what you said, halfway through the season? Ricky had 11 podiums, including wins. Eagle had 9. McBeth had 8. Hammes had 3. Heimberg had 5. Like, those are numbers that are very quickly, the 11 number is very quickly becoming unreachable for any pro this season. You'd have to put together a near perfect end of season in order to break double digits of podium and wins. So it's a different season this year, and it makes for some great golf.
It does. It does. Thank you, by the way, to Aaron for emailing in to upshot@ultiworld.com with some great notes and stats on the podiums. Last little bit on MPO before we take a break and come back to talk about Valerie Mondahano. Gannon Buhr almost podiumed and has now moved into 4th place in the Disc Golf Pro Tour standings this season. He is now officially ahead of Paul McBeth in the Pro Tour standings. And I want to ask you, Josh, did I say he's 4th? That's wrong. He's 3rd. He's now 3rd. Now, keep in mind, Chris Dickerson, who's in 4th, has not played a couple of the last 2 events. Don't be surprised if you see Chris Dickerson later this season retake that spot. But Gannon is in 3rd. Paul McBeth is in 5th. My question is, who's playing better this season, Gannon or Paul? Now, keep in mind, Paul has a win. He won at Waco. Gannon has no wins. Is that enough to tip the scales in your mind, or is Gannon Buhr's higher level of consistency, hard to believe I'm saying that, outshining Paul McBeth? Because Gannon has finished ahead of Paul at
6 of
5
the
straight
8
tournaments.
Yeah, it's
6 of the 8.
Six,
there you
6
go.
of 8 Elite Series events. It becomes, I think, 7 of 10 if you include a couple Silver Series where they both played. But
Gannon outplayed Paul at the major. I know Paul had that incredible round, but the problem is if you have a horrible round and an incredible round, they cancel each other out, and that's what's been happening for Paul McBeth. Gannon hasn't finished behind Paul McBeth since Jonesboro.
Yep. And that's
who's having the better season, Josh?
If you were to give me these 2 players and say only one of these 2 can win Player of the Year, they're the only 2 that are eligible. For some reason, everyone else got disqualified. They joined some Saudi Arabian tour or something. Anyway. It's actually a subject I want to talk about on the show. I think there's some parallels and some interesting things that we need to talk about. But anyway,
put a pin in that. Well, maybe we'll talk about it Thursday.
There we go. These 2 are the only 2 that are left for Player of the Year. I know we oftentimes say you can't win Player of the Year without a win. When you look at just these 2, I think that you have to give it to Gannon. It's not just like, we're not talking, in splitting hairs in their performances in terms of how well they've played. There are some massive differences at some tournaments. For example, Waco, the one that Paul won, Gannon takes 25th. That one was not a good showing. Texas State's 7th and 8th for Gannon. That one's pretty close. You then get to Champions Cup, 5th versus 9th, and the 9th is thanks to a no pressure course record scorching round. So, props, I guess. Like that's good. But then DDO is 10th and 51st. OTB is 9th and 19th. And then Portland is 4th and 5th. Gannon has just been the more consistent player and at a level that is high enough that I think justifies giving him the better season title.
So far.
Now,
I don't think anybody's going to delude themselves into saying that Paul McBeth, should have lower odds to win, I should say longer odds, I suppose, to win the world championships or something. No one's going to say that. We know what Paul McBeth can do. We know he can turn it around in an instant and then go on a tear where he's, feels like he's unstoppable. I mean, we saw it at the beginning of the season. What's crazy about this year for McBeth is that he was having the best start to a year basically in his career.
Yeah.
Like, if you looked at his round ratings, he'd never started hotter. Just destroyed everybody at the Memorial, and then comes out and wins Waco, and you're like, damn, this dude's about to have a monster season. Remember we were talking about, it's like, we didn't say guaranteed, but like, we were talking about him at Champions Cup as like, who else do you pick?
Yep.
Who else do you pick? And I'm pretty sure we both picked Macbeth to win that tournament. And really, since then, he hasn't been right. And I don't know what the issue is, but it's just been a little squirrely. And I think I agree. I think it's close because of the win for Macbeth. I think it helps Gannon to have, almost won at LVC and like more or less gone to a playoff. He's also younger, so maybe I'd give him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. But it's he's been the more consistent player. And the thing about Macbeth, even in the years when he hasn't won as much lately, he's been the most consistent player on tour. And that has not been there this season. So an interesting story to keep an eye on.
One quick mulligan. Gannon has only have 5 out of 7. Paul did not play LVC. And my counting meant that I missed that. So Gannon did have the second place, did not beat Paul. The one other thing I wanted to add about Gannon's performance, though, and in his consistency in terms of his playoff. I mean, Macbeth has a playoff as well, but Macbeth's win was at Waco. And I'm sorry, the more Waco, the more I see Waco and the winners of Waco and then the rest of their season and even careers sometimes, the less I give weight to wins at Waco. So maybe that's unfair of me.
It's something weird about that course. I mean, which I appreciate that about the tournament, but it's a fair point that you make.
Yeah. So I kick it down one peg as opposed if he had won, I don't know, OTB or Portland or Jonesboro, maybe. But anyway, just my side note.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to do a little purse watch. We're also going to talk about Valerie Mondahano's tremendous weekend and where she stands in the conversation among the top players this year. Don't go anywhere. It's The Upshot. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the best bags in the sport. Right now, you can pre-order the 2022 Ambassador Deluxe Octothorpe. Whether you prefer the steel and turquoise colored Nate Sexton version or Big Germ's Ranger Green dipped in black with Bordeaux accents, both just absolutely beautiful bags. The limited edition Ambassador Octothorpes include a special Ambassador patch, as well as all of the upgrades, including Velcro patches, a scorecard pocket, and wider long pockets. Go to PoundDiscGolf.com and pre-order yours today. Welcome back to The Upshot. Portland Open. Super long course at Glendoveer. All this distance. Oh, Paige Pierce. Oh, Ella Hansen. No. Valerie Mondahano. Valerie Mondahano wins her second tournament of the season, and she does so in dominating fashion. I mean, it really wasn't even a battle at the end of the day. She shoots a 7 under, tied for the hot round in the final round to close out a very comfortable 9-shot victory over Ohn Scoggins, 10 shots over Katrina Allen, and was either shot the hot round or was in a stroke or two of the hot round every single round. The whole thing kickstarted by an insane stretch of birdies in round 1 when she got the last 6 to put together the early hot round to take a 1-shot lead into round 2, and that was that. Wire-to-wire victory, dominant win. I don't even remember the last time somebody not named Paige or Katrina or maybe Kristen won a tournament in such dominant fashion. Kristen did it this season, I include her in the list. I'm going to take it back. I just remove the maybe, take it out. I can't remember the last time I watched a player, not one of those big 3, that has just destroyed the field at a tournament like this. Honestly, I mean, I'm sure we could go and do the stats or whatever, but like in my memory, there's nothing.
Including some of the big 3, right? Like, this wasn't a tournament where Paige and Katrina were gone. Like, she beat Paige and Katrina in that dominating fashion. Kristen, obviously not there, but Katrina had one bad round. She had a 922 rated round 3, 7 strokes off of Valerie's round 3, which was also Valerie's lowest round 3 at 978. Even if you're generous enough to give Katrina those strokes, 7 strokes, Valerie still wins handedly, and we still talk about Valerie winning 3 strokes clear of the field, not mentioning everyone else way below, and averaging that out. Like that's how dominant Valerie's win was this weekend, that it was incredible. It was incredible how well she played this weekend and where she was relative to the rest of the field. And if you look, part of that was, you have round 1, like you said, those 6 straight birdies that propels her to 1,000 rated round. And then your next, and this is part of what was so difficult, I think, look at the rest of your leaderboard after round 1. You had Rebecca Cox, who shot 64, so 1 stroke worse. Owen Scoggins and Juliana Korver shoot 65s, so then you're 2 strokes behind. And then you have to jump to 67 or 4 strokes back to find Katrina, Natalie Ryan, and a couple other players. That there is something to be said about who is chasing you when you look at podiums and leaderboards. And that was something that, even if you're just looking at strokes, 4 strokes on the reigning world champion is a big deal. But I'm sorry, when I look at Rebecca Cox, Owen Scoggins, and Juliana Korver, I see amazing players, but I don't see ones who are going to chase down an established player on tour this year who already has an Elite Series win, who has played incredibly well, and is showing some of her best golf of the season. That I want to see the Katrinas, I want to see the Pages, I want to see Kristen. Those are the names I'm like, okay, these players are gonna try and run down Valerie, right? No one was saying in the MPO side, it was, Paul McBeth is going to run Simon down. It was Joel Freeman's going to run Simon down, though he is capable. That there is something to be said about who is chasing you. Valerie had a well-established buffer after round 1, thanks to 1,000 rated round on those players who we expected to chase her down. And then that lead only continued to grow as those players were still just a couple strokes off the mark.
I mean, it wasn't even a contest this weekend. Like, here's what impressed me. And this is why I think Valerie has the opportunity to become a stalwart player that wins multiple tournaments every season. It's the full package of game. Backhand, forehand, approach, putting, control, gutsiness, mental game, you name it. She was the best putter this weekend. I don't even think of Valerie Mondahano as like some kind of elite putter. Like, that's not, when I think of like great putters in FPO, I think of Owen Scoggins. I don't think of Valerie Mondahano. Mm-hmm. And yet she was the best putter this weekend. She was top 5 tee to green. She had her birdie percentage was 46%. The next highest was 35%. I mean, it was just, this feels like Jonesboro Kristen Tatar, where it was just like, okay, there's nothing you can do. You've already lost. The tournament is over after round 3. And I think you're now at a point where, now that Mondahano has 2 wins, obviously that puts her in elite company for the season, because you only have 2 other players that have multiple wins this year, and it's Paige and it's Kristen. So here's the question I want to ask Josh. How does she stack up with the big 3? And the next question would be, is she clearly now the number 4 player this season? So Paige has 3 wins. Val and Kristen have 2. Katrina Allen has 1.
Good start.
Let's look at some other stats. Podiums. Kristen leads the way with 6 podium finishes. Kristen has not missed the podium at an Elite Series event, by the way. Incredible. Katrina has 5. Paige has 4. Valerie has 2. Okay, so, her podium finishes have been her wins. So she's a little feast or famine-ish when it comes to the week in and week out grind of the tour. Average finish, Kristen Tatar, 1.8 leading the way. And Paige is in second, Katrina's in third, Valerie a little bit back at 5.4, Paige and Kristen in the threes. The best Circle 1 in regulation and Circle 2 in regulation, well, that's Kristen. Mm-hmm. But Valerie's numbers are competitive with those players. C1X putting, Valerie leads the way at 74%. Second best is Paige at 72%. Best Circle 2 putter is Katrina, 22%. Everybody else in the teens. So I don't want to sit on the stats too long. I want to point out that Valerie is in the ballpark of these players, has the 2 wins. The one thing you might say isn't quite there is the consistency week in and week out of, are you up at the top with regularity? And that the answer to that question right now is no, but the answer could be yes soon.
She talked about in an interview that this tournament is meaningful now to her because it wasn't really the style of golf that people would associate with her game. She went into Texas, and we picked her in Texas all day because Silver Series, Elite Series. I mean, she was just playing great, and it's because that's the style of golf that really suits her. And like you said, we come into distance, and these long, I don't want to say open, but just very long shot shaping, and the lines are just so much. There's so much more air to get behind on the disc to shape those lines. And it really was not one that we expected to see from Valerie. What I think that, as you point out, that she has the complete game, I think this is really well established when you can see that her control of the disc, her putting, her all-around well-roundedness is something that is going to bode well for her because it means that she can win in Texas. It means she can win on the West Coast swing. And it certainly means that I think she can win on the East Coast swing. That establishes a kind of week in and week out ability to win. As you mentioned, just needs to get the consistency. But, when we jump to 5th place in the Pro Tour standings, it's Missy Gannon. I think it's very clear, while Valerie is a little bit behind the big 3, her numbers are in the ballpark. That is not the case for Missy Gannon. Missy Gannon does not have a win. She has 1 podium finish this year, and that was at Jonesboro, and her average finish is 8.8, which is a larger gap from Valerie to Missy than it is from Valerie to Katrina, and by almost a full point, a full place. So just a very significant gap between our top players and who is the next best on tour right now.
Yeah, and you think about some of the other people you might have in that conversation. Sarah Hokom. Well, I think Sarah's taken a little bit of a step back this season. Mm-hmm. Hailey King. I mean, Hailey King has finished behind Valerie Mondahano at every tournament that they both played at except one. Kona Panis. I mean, hasn't really been around the top 10 very much. 17th this weekend. Kat Murch has had a great year. She's in 6th place in the Pro Tour standings. She's had a great year, no doubt. But I think it's quite obvious that Valerie's had a better year. Mm-hmm. Even without the wins, that's probably true. And, I think other players have just been less consistent. At the end of the day, even though Valerie only has the 2 podiums, she's only missed the top 10 once.
Right.
It was at OTB. She was 12th. So it's not like it's some kind of, she's finishing 25th half the time. No, she's 6th, 7th range a lot. And then she's got the wins. But I mean, I don't necessarily know what I think this means for the future. I still think that players like Ella Hansen and Hailey King probably have a higher ceiling than Valerie Mondahano because of the distance, because of the all-around skill. I mean, we're not far removed from Hailey King winning multiple Elite Series events. But this year, I mean, it's, clearly Hailey King is in transition after moving out of her, hometown and establishing herself, living in Charlotte and everything else. I don't know what the reasons are, switching bags, the whole thing. It's a lot of change for a young player. But Valerie is also a young player, and we are seeing a clear emergence of the biggest challenger to those top three. Simple as that.
And I think you bring up something that is really poignant. That kind of all-around, well-rounded game, that kind of consistency is going to be rewarded. But it's only going to be rewarded until those with the higher ceiling develop, even comparable levels of consistency. Hailey King may never be as consistent as Valerie Mondahano, but if she can develop even 50% more consistent, then week in and week out, it's going to be Hailey and Valerie comes occasionally. It really is the Missy Gannon to the Paige Pierce, as is the Valerie to Hailey King comparison. I mean, don't forget, Missy Gannon has Elite Series wins. Missy Gannon has little M major wins at the right. Missy Gannon has some incredible wins, but no one's going to come up and say, "Oh, Missy Gannon is undisputed best player of the past 3 years." And I think that it's fair to argue that that's probably not going to be a title that Valerie ever retains, assuming those players live up to their ceiling. But if you're Valerie, and if you're a fan of Valerie, you have to be pleased with how well she's playing and the kind of performances that she's been able to put together. And I think that you're going to see her get a couple wins over the next couple of years as well, even if those other players do develop, as we've talked about.
So let's take a look at the purse watch. The Portland Open becomes the highest purse of the year, $85,000. Now, we don't have the exact number yet, but the Pro Tour did put out a press release that said it's going to be at more than $85,000. $10,000 to the MPO winner, $5,000 to the FPO winner. $10K to MPO is the biggest payout on the Pro Tour this season. OTB paid out a little more in FPO, $5,500. I think the biggest note here, Josh, is that the percent change over last year, Portland Open up almost 50% from last year. 2021, it was $56,750. This year, $85K. And who knows where it ends up. I had a lot of spectators. Maybe they're going to put a little bit of that money into the pot. So we'll await the final word. But either way, this is the highest paying tournament outside of the major at Champions Cup.
One thing on that notice of difference, how long was Portland Open before? How long did we know about Portland Open, and did the Pro Tour know about Portland Open before they kind of finalized where it was going to be and put it all together? I mean, Portland Open was one last year that kind of got thrown together at the last minute. So I'm not surprised that the percent of change is pretty high. But that being said, Portland Open was pretty consistent last year with where its purse was. So, where the rest of the purses were. And so, but the $50,000 added cash, it is the highest of the season. And it's for players, they've got to be thrilled. We will talk about spectator experience though on Thursday and get to those emails.
We got some great emails from listeners to upshot@ultiworld.com about their experience at the Portland Open. And if you went to the Portland Open and you want to tell us about your experience there, please let us know. And we're going to start kind of tracking this information at every tournament. So if you go to any disc golf tournament on the pro scene this year, whether it's a major or a DGPT event or even a Silver Series, email us. Let us know, how was it? What made it good? What's got room for improvement? This is something that I think is it's difficult to assess this without actually being on the ground. So getting those reports, I think, is super valuable, and we've got a lot of really interesting email to take a look at on Thursday. So that is going to do it for this week's edition of the Upshot, or this Tuesday's edition, I should say. Josh wins the picks this week and has actually overtaken me in the standings. He picked Simon to win and got the 5 bonus points, and that pushed him ahead of me by a couple of points. If you want to see where things stand and follow all of our over-unders and our picks, go to discgolf.ultiworld.com/upshot-picks. It's all there. For Josh Mansfield, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you on Thursday right here on The Upshot.